This channel is for educational purposes only. Make sure you do your own due diligence before making any investments. And there is inherent risk in trading, so it's speculative. Just make sure you keep that in mind. Hi, I'm going to be on the Your Daily 5 today on Stock Charts TV. Be on the lookout for that this afternoon. It'll replay several times over the next few days. Hi, this is Joe. I wanted to follow up on a prior video. I gave a few examples of breakout plays and wanted to make sure you understand. It's basically what I'm trying to do today is I want to refine this entry strategy a little bit, give you a little bit more insight so that you're not just diving into anything that looks like a potential breakout as soon as it pulls back. I want to get into this example, and I'm going to use the stock Checkpoint CHKP was a stock that I brought up in a prior video just in the last week or so. And I mentioned that this had broken out and that we would want to look for some kind of a pullback to get in. And so, the thing is that while that is true, I think you have to take it and know and have something in mind for what you're looking for, because there's a few key criteria that I use, and I probably, it's second nature to me, so I don't even think about it, but I want to make sure I cover this just to make sure you get it and have a little bit better understanding. So, if I'm looking at a daily chart and I said I'm looking for a a counter trend trade to develop on the daily chart, or what I call an opposing trend trigger. If you notice what's taken place, let's go back to the weekly chart. So you had this breakout at this level here. And if you notice, we're re-entering the breakout. Now, and I've said this in the past, that doesn't bother me that much if you're going to bleed back some towards the 18 on this time frame. But the problem I have is that we've already rebroken the breakout area, and we're nowhere near the 18 on this time frame. So that bothers me. That's one point that bothers me. The second point is if I look at the weekly bar, look at that big green bar. When you have a big bar like this, you want to go to the midpoint of this bar, and you really don't want to see it break that level. So, I would have in my own mind, I would be putting in and you might even put it on your chart, the midpoint of this big green bar. It's probably right about there. I don't actually have it up here right now, but and you could just use the green portion if you wanted, but figure out what the midpoint of that big green move is. And if you were to go back below that, I would view that as a pretty big negative. You have this big, strong buying bar that should be suggesting that there's more upside follow through. And if you retrace more than 50% of it, it's sort of telling you that it's not that strong. So that's one key point that I wanted to make. If we go to the daily chart, you can see that the 18 is still above the 40 and both lines are rising. We're nowhere near creating an opposing trend trigger. And so this stock is going to have to drop a significant portion more than it has already if we're going to play this using a weekly and a daily. And so from that standpoint, and again, if I go back to the weekly and look at what this would have to do in order to create that opposing trend trigger on the daily, you'd be doing a lot of damage, and I would consider this more of a failed breakout move. So that's sort of discouraging. Now, if we wanted to look at this and say, okay, maybe this is actually just a pullback on the daily chart, and I'm looking for an entry on the hourly chart, we can do that as well. And that might be actually the play that we were looking for here. The problem I have with that right now is look at what has happened to the red DI on this move. We had a crossover, and then it held, and then you made a significantly new high. I mean, red DI on the hourly got up to 45. And now if you notice the blue line, which is the ADX line, is now at 28, and that's based on the selling. So this pullback was pretty orderly up until the last couple bars, basically through the action of the last 3 hours here. And this is telling me that this is pretty violent selling. And so and if you notice, the MACD line has actually crossed down significantly below zero again. And so we got to be a little bit more careful here. I don't think it's as simple as just turning on a dime and coming up through the 2 moving averages. I think this is going to be more of a complex reversal pattern just based on the strength of the sellers. So I think, when I look at this, it would be a stock. If I'm going through and let's say I had 15 or 20 stocks that I was looking at as breakout patterns, this would probably come off the list. If I have a watch list of say 20 stocks, I would probably pull this off the list because in a lot of ways, this has just done a little bit too much damage in the short term to really be considered, I think, anytime soon. So you want to key off the breakout area on the weekly. Again, it's okay to bleed back, but keep in mind, you want to watch the size of this big breakout bar, and you want to know what the midpoint is of that bar. That's number one. Number two, you want to look for an opposing trend trigger to take place without doing a significant amount of damage to the weekly. We don't have that in this situation. And then number three, if we're going to trade it off the daily and the hourly, we need to make sure that the sellers don't have a lot of power. And this looks like a lot of power to me. So again, this sort of takes, from my standpoint, I'm always looking at stocks that I think look attractive on the bigger picture. But then a lot of times I'll never buy them because they never set up on the trigger side. The lower time frames is never set up properly. And you need to understand that and be able to cross them off the list and say that's okay. And have the patience to wait for something that really does meet your criteria. So hope this was helpful. Please hit the like button and we'll talk to you soon.